2024 has been one of the best years for JRPGs. We have been absolutely spoiled, and I'm going to list my top 10 JRPGs from 2024. Quick ground rules: I'm going to be including any games that came out exclusively in Japan and came to the West this year, and I'm also going to be excluding any remasters or HD remakes that I thought were too similar to the original. So to be clear, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Persona 3 Reloaded, and Dragon Quest 3 2D HD Remake are not included, because let's be honest, if I was including them, they'd probably make the list. But let's get started with number 10, Legend of Heroes: Trails Through Daybreak. This is the latest entry in the Trails series, but there's no obligation to play any of the other ones to understand this game. In this game, you play as a mercenary slash private investigator named Vaughn, who is kind of a breath of fresh air as far as JRPG and protagonists go. For starters, he's in his mid-20s, and he's not like perfectly good, nor is he a bad boy character either. He's kind of morally gray, and you really appreciate him for it.
You gotta know what work I do here.
I do. You're a contractor people go to when they have a job they feel uncomfortable discussing with the police or the guild.
I would say the story is a political drama, and it takes place in kind of a realistic world. You're solving mysteries and creating your classic lovable cast of JRPG characters. You'll be using a hybrid combat system with pretty simple real-time mechanics, but engaging turn-based positional strategy. The positional strategy in this game is what makes this combat system stand out in my mind. You'll also be able to deeply customize your party through equipment that you'll either find or produce in the game. If you want a more realistic, dramatic, and mysterious story, coupled with engaging turn-based combat, Legend of Heroes: Trails Through Daybreak may be the game for you. You can get it on PlayStation, Switch, and PC. Number 9, Sandland. If the art style looks familiar to you, that's because this game is based on the manga by the late Akira Toriyama. R.I.P. The story follows demon prince Beelzebub in a post-apocalyptic Mad Max-like desert open world. The characters are goofy and endearing in the way that you would find in a manga. As I said before, this game has an open world and it has real-time combat, but the real meat of the game is in the vehicle combat. You can make different types of vehicles that can be built and customized. They have different purposes. Some can move large objects, some can blow up destructible objects. And as far as manga to game adaptations, this sits very close to the top of the list for me. It's simple, it's fun, it's nostalgic. If you're looking at the game footage and it's making you feel nostalgic and it looks like a game you enjoy, more than likely you'd enjoy the game. With Sandland, what you see is what you get. What you get is good, clean fun. Sandland can be played on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC. Number 8, Visions of Mana. Visions of Mana is a very standard JRPG, and I don't mean that in a negative way. After all, we love JRPGs. You follow a party led by the main protagonist, Val, on a grand quest through a beautiful world. The journey questions the meaning of sacrifice and tradition. However, this is a very traditional fantasy story, with interesting twists and turns and beautifully brought to life. The gameplay takes place in large open zones with plenty of room for exploration, and a wide variety of biomes to keep the visuals interesting. And navigating this world is a joy with well-executed movement mechanics. You'll be using real-time combat with a well-executed class system. The game's not always complex or strategic, but it's fun nonetheless. If you want a feel-good story, beautiful world, and simple but satisfying real-time combat, Visions of Mana might be a game that you'd love. You can play Visions of Mana on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC. Number 7, Ys 10 Nordics. This is the 10th game in the Ys series, but past knowledge of the games is not required. It takes place in a Nordic / pirate setting, which, I'm all about. I love pirates. You'll follow dual protagonists Adol and Karja as they sail from island to island, fighting and uncovering secrets about the mysterious Grieger, which are undying creatures. This is another real-time action RPG with 2 characters with unique fighting styles, but they can combine to create an additional third fighting style. And the traversal mechanics in this game are also very fun. You can use the mana string like grappling hook to swing around from tree to tree. You also get a hoverboard thingy that you can kind of skateboard around the world, board over water. And a big draw for me in this game, because I love pirates, is the fact that you get an upgradable ship that you can use to travel the world and engage in naval battles. I want to warn you in advance, the ship feels super slow in the beginning, but as you upgraded it, it does get faster. If you're looking for a sea-themed JRPG with fast-paced real-time combat and a limited party but deeper relationships and connections, then Ys 10 Nordics is the game for you. You can play it on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. Before I get into number 6, I want to let you know I do gaming news roundups weekly, shameless plug, but feel free to check those out and subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. Number 6. Granblue Fantasy Relink. One of the first things I noticed about this game when I booted it up was just how high quality it was. It almost felt like I was playing one of those fake trailers where they give you quote-unquote game footage, but it's not actually game footage. But in this case, it was real gameplay. In Granblue Fantasy Relink, you follow a group of skyfarers who sail around the sky looking for a magical land that grants wishes. The characters are good and the story is relatively short. But for full disclosure, this game is a follow-up to a mobile game series. So honestly, I was a little confused when I first started playing. The story becomes pretty clear as you get through it, but you'll definitely miss some things if you haven't played the mobile game. If that's a deal breaker for you, maybe don't choose this game. The gameplay is very straightforward. You get your mission, you run through a linear path fighting enemies, and you finish with a boss. You do this for every chapter. And so far, I guess the way I'm describing this game, it doesn't make it sound like it should be number 6, but man, did they deliver. They had great execution in their gameplay. There are tons of unique characters to play with as well as build your party composition, each feeling completely different than the other. And while I personally have yet to dive into the in-game content, it seems very deep so far. And from what I've heard, some people have put in hundreds of hours into this game, grinding, leveling up. In addition, it's also multiplayer, so you can play with your friends.
Hurry it up, Huygen.
I'm so sorry. This isn't my fault.
If you're less into story but you want a tight, well-produced action experience with deep progression and satisfying battles, Granblue Fantasy Relink is definitely the game for you. You can play this game on PlayStation and PC. Number 5. Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven. This game's story takes place over the course of several generations, and you play as the king who needs to defend against the threat of legendary heroes from the past. This game is a remake, and while the original came out in 1992, it does keep a lot of its classic appeal. The game uses turn-based combat and allows you to choose between a number of interesting formations that have pros and cons. The game uses an inheritance mechanic, which means that party members can die permanently in the game, but when recruiting another party member of the same class, they can inherit the abilities of your previous party members. And eventually, you'll move on to the next generation, and all of your party members will become new characters. Originally, I was terrified of having my party members die, but then I realized it's just a part of the progression system. For me, this is one of the most interesting mechanics that I've played with this year. You can also upgrade different parts of your kingdom, like the blacksmith, for example. Depending on your choices in previous generations, those will affect both the gameplay and the story in the later generations. If you want a JRPG with a traditional feeling turn-based system with modern enhancements and a unique mechanic in the generation inheritance system, check out Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven. You can play this game on PlayStation, Switch, and PC. Number 4. Unicorn Overlord. Now I gotta admit, with this game I didn't know what I was getting into at all. Someone suggested it, I downloaded it, I played it. I thought it was going to be like a comedy game because it's called Unicorn Overlord, which admittedly, it's a bit of a silly name, but it sucked me in. You play as Prince Elaine leading the Liberation Army. You coordinate and lead troops to liberate different towns and take back a kingdom that was lost to an evil tyrant. This is a tactical strategy game where you can explore a map, engage in battles, and come out victorious by commanding your troops strategically. You can mix and match your unit and customize the actions of each troop in your unit, leading to practically unlimited strategies. In addition to this, each type of troop has its own abilities that can be used outside of combat as well. This is the type of game that's simple to learn, but as you learn more, you see how deep the rabbit hole goes. If you love tactical games and you want to get sucked into one with a rock-solid gameplay loop of exploring a map and liberating towns, Unicorn Overlord is absolutely the one you should check out. You can play Unicorn Overlord on PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox. Number 3. Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth. This game is the 8th installment of the Yakuza franchise, but again, you don't need to play the other games to understand this game. You play as a lovable dope named Ichiban, who's ex-Yakuza. The game takes place in a very real-world setting, in both Japan and Hawaii. One thing I must say about this game is that it's probably the funniest game I've ever played, and maybe the best writing. I absolutely love every single character in this game, and the story is of course silly and stupid, but also heartfelt and intense at times. As for the gameplay, you'll find yourself in turn-based combat with positional and environmental strategy elements. Admittedly, the combat can get repetitive when you're just wandering around the world, but combat tied to the story typically feels challenging and unique. If you played any of the Yakuza games, you know that the side content is practically unlimited and very welcome. There's a lot of varied and different kinds of mini games you can play in this game. Most of them hit the target. And you'd think that the game with the most realistic world would be the least fun to explore. Like, would you rather explore Honolulu or a magical world? But somehow that's not the case. The exploration in Yakuza is strangely satisfying, both in Japan and in Honolulu. This isn't just one of my favorite JRPGs of the year, this is one of my favorite games of the year. And its pirate-based sequel that's coming out next year is definitely one of my most anticipated. If you want a game game that can be both hilarious and heartfelt with great characters and great gameplay. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is absolutely a game you should check out. You can play it on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
Huh? Oh, it reeks in here. Good luck washing out this stank.
Before we get into the top 2, how lucky are we that we had more than 10 games that I was considering for this list? Here are my 2 honorable mentions. Mario and Luigi Brothership. Eiyuden Chronicles. Now for the top 2. I had a really hard time choosing which one I wanted to put in top 1 and top 2. I'm sure everyone knows the 2 games that are remaining. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm not going to talk too much about the story of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth because it just picks up where it left off from the last game, but I will say this game continues to have great music, great storytelling, and develops the already loved characters even more. For me, this is the most beautiful game on the list. This game takes the real-time combat of Remake and adds just a bit more and polishes it up a little bit. This is another favorite of mine. I think that this is my favorite real-time combat of every game that I played this year.
That's over.
Another huge difference between Remake and Rebirth, this game has an open zone system, and these zones are huge. Every single time I entered a new zone, I was awestruck by just how much there was, but also how beautiful everything looked. Can't say that enough. Beyond the deep real-time combat and the beautiful open zone, this game also has tons of side content, including Queen's Blood, which is, for me, a pretty top-tier minigame. I don't think I need to specify the kind of person that should play this game. Practically everyone that played the first game. If you're into JRPGs, this game is definitely worth your time, but I do suggest starting with Final Fantasy Remake first. And this game is, for now, exclusively on the PlayStation. Number 1, and I'm sure many of you saw this coming, Metaphor ReFantasio. This game takes place in a fantasy world filled with different races and equally filled with discrimination. The protagonist starts on a journey to save the cursed prince, but winds up in the running for the magically selected future king. And for me, Metaphor has hands down the best story of the year, of any game. It handles pretty heavy themes without ever coming off as elitist. For like an 80 to 90 hour playthrough, it is pretty well paced, which is crazy. That's not something I would ever imagine myself saying. It uses a hybrid combat system with basic real-time combat, but in-depth, strategic, sometimes punishing turn-based combat.
Let's get on with it!
There's a deep and satisfying progression system through its class system called Archetypes. Archetype system allows you to customize and change your party structure at will. The game also includes an impactful relationship system, as well as the tightest iteration of a calendar system that I've ever played in a game. Personally, Metaphor ReFantasio is the game of the year. And now, who should play this game? Really, if you like JRPGs, which you probably do if you're watching this video, then you should probably play this game. I don't know if there should be any more qualifiers. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my picks, or if I missed a game entirely. Also, let me know in the comments. Would appreciate it if you liked the video. My name is Terrence. I'm going to keep playing games till I find the perfect one. Peace. Love.